An eyeball covered by a red no sign spins into view. White text on a black background reads, Mason in the dark. A blind man's journey through the wacky world of reading, writing, and other silly bollocks. Brought to you from beyond the black screen. Cut to black. Hello everyone. Mason here. How you doing? When it comes to life as a blind daughter, some things are harder than others. For example, the bitter bloody war against inaccessible technology provides its own set of constantly evolving obstacles to overcome, with apps like Gmail and Discord that have previously worked pretty well for me being rendered a pain in the arse overnight by an unwanted update. I used to write down everything in my Gmail drafts because I hadn't found a single accessible word processor, and then there was an unwanted update. Suddenly, Gmail wasn't a viable option anymore, and I was forced to download Google Docs, an app that hadn't worked for me in the past. Luckily for me, the opposite had happened, and updates had made it much more useful. You lose some, you win some. I could make an entire video on the trials and tribulations of attempting to navigate the technological world, and maybe one day I will, but it's not my biggest challenge as a blind daughter. So what is? Good question. Let's talk about it. We'll say I've just come up with a new idea and start a new project. I pick up my phone and unlock it, which is considerably easier since I got a phone with a fingerprint scanner. I swipe upwards with 2 fingers to open the apps menu and then sidewards with 2 fingers to change the page. The way TalkBack works is a single tap with my thumb locates something on the screen and a double tap selects it. Once I've inevitably found Goodreads, Fiverr and Voxer first, I finally land on Docs and open it. At a very specific point in the bottom right hand corner that might take me a few attempts to find is the thankfully labelled button that opens the new documents menu. After double tapping new docs file, I'm in, and a brand new blissfully blank document is ready and waiting for me to splurge my ideas into. Okay, so now what? We'll start with a setting. Let's say the opening scene takes place in a restaurant, although on second thoughts it's more of a trendy gastropub situation. I want it to have a comfortable vibe, but I don't want it to be too upmarket, so let's say it's 8 PM on a Friday night in mid-August. A team of waiters in black polo shirts weave in and out of little wooden tables and private booths. They carry trays of food and drink or sizzling skillets that waft delicious aromas throughout the room, which is filled with the gradually building buzz of private conversations that get louder with each new round of drinks. It's a pleasant, balmy evening, and in the sun-soaked beer garden, little groups of families and friends lounge at benches enjoying their meal and a nice cold drink to the soundtrack of gently flowing traffic on the main road. In the far corner, 2 characters, X and Y, sit across from each other, and they're afforded a good deal of privacy by the empty tables around them. But who are they? Well, for now we'll say this is a contemporary romance, so they're on a date and their names are Will and Phil. I'm making this up as I go along, cut me some slack. Will is a 24-year-old lad fresh out of uni working in a sports apparel shop. He's tired of meaningless flings with stupid guys that don't take him seriously, and this is his 4th date in 3 months. Phil is a 28-year-old delivery driver / singer-songwriter who's just got over a painful breakup with his high school sweetheart, and he's looking for someone to prove that love still exists. Okay, cool, we're ready to go. But wait, we don't actually know what Will or Phil look like, and now we've stumbled upon the issue. Guys, I don't know what people look like. Yeah, I used to be able to see, but not very well. I only ever really recognised people due to their voice and identifiable markers. I know Becky because she's the one that's way taller than me with a bright purple mohawk. Tom is the one with the super deep voice that always calls me little dude and wears a leather trench coat. Jack is the one that always marches up to me and gives me a bear hug. The older I got, the less I could see and the less identifiable people became. It was an incredibly common occurrence for people to come up to me, say hello, have an entire conversation and then leave without me having any idea who they were. Certain people clocked onto this and started introducing themselves. Alright Mason, it's Dave. This actually happened to me the other day in Sainsbury's. A man came up, said hello, I had a moment of panic because I had no clue who he was and I'm not as good at faking it as I used to be. Then he introduced himself as the dad of one of my old school friends. My point is, when it comes to physical descriptions, I have to work in broad strokes. I can describe Will as a lanky, underfed looking guy with friendly green eyes and a tufty head of jet black hair. He wears expensive looking Nike trainers, a pair of 3/4 length urban camo shorts and a generically branded bottle green t-shirt. I want them to be an unlikely couple, so Phil is a broad-shouldered, muscly guy with smouldering deep brown eyes. He has long flowing locks of dirty blonde hair, a strong jaw and a handsome dusting of 5 o'clock shadow. He wears a battered pair of Converse, ripped jeans, a black t-shirt with a skeleton cowboy riding a mechanical horse, and a sleeve full of tattoos. Move aside, Will. I want to go on a date with this guy. That's all fine, but what about the idiosyncratic details that make them feel like individuals? Maybe one of them has a scar on their face from a childhood accident, a chin dimple, laughter lines, bags under their eyes because they work so hard. Maybe you can still see the marks where Phil got a lip piercing when he was a teenager, but he doesn't wear it anymore because it never suited him. There's certain things that I know through cultural osmosis, and I can pretty much navigate the familiar, everyday world you'd expect to find in a contemporary romance, but things start to get tricky when you need the intricate details. What if Phil is now Philomena and she's a 27-year-old photography student? I know very little about women's fashion, especially contemporary women's fashion, and even more especially non-alternative contemporary women's fashion. I can probably wing it if Philomena is a bad girl with a bit of an attitude. She can keep the Converse and the ripped jeans, but maybe now she wears a tank top and a battered leather jacket. She now has a nose ring and shoulder-length blonde hair with red highlights. However, if she's the kind of lady that's into trendy mainstream fashion or designer clothing, I'd start to get a little bit lost. Whether it's Phil or Philomena, if fashion matters to them, then I want to do that justice, but when it comes to tailored suits and fancy shoes, hats and other accessories, leggings, skirts and dresses, I have no idea where to start describing what they look like. At the end of the day, I don't want my characters to be a homogenous cast of Caucasian 20-somethings that dress like they're from the mid to late noughties, but when it comes to diversity of age, ethnicity and culture, I don't know what people look like, what they wear, or what colours complement their skin tone. When it comes to the finer details of clothing or physical appearance like makeup, jewellery and facial structure, I'm out of my depth, and the last thing I want is to accidentally cater to lazy or offensive stereotypes. I try to stick to describing the way people feel when they're in the presence of a particular character. Is their face stern or friendly? Is it weather-beaten and grizzled or smooth and youthful? Is their body language open and relaxed or imposing and aggressive? The problem is, I'm aware that sometimes this can stray into telling, not showing, and I just don't have the depth of knowledge required to provide those intimate details that might lend it some authenticity. Obviously, this isn't a problem that's just confined to people, though. The fact of the matter is, when I could see, my vision was simplistic, like a child's drawing, blocks of colour with no detail. Outside of cartoon depictions, I don't know what most animals look like, and I wouldn't be able to describe them. A lot of animals, even the common ones, I only know by name. For example, let's take a look at Enemies of the Crown, Volume 4 of The Bleeding Ground. In that chapter, the main character, Evander, who I described as being thin, pale and scruffy looking with overly long tangled hair and a scraggly unkempt beard, had spent months wandering in the wilderness. One morning, he makes a sarcastic comment to a sparrow, who doesn't talk back to him because The Bleeding Ground isn't that sort of fantasy. But my confession is, I have no idea what a sparrow looks like. When it comes to landscapes, I can describe a gorgeous sunrise over the seemingly endless rolling hills of the countryside. I can tell you that it smells fresh and earthy, or that it's treacherous and uneven underfoot. However, when it comes to the lovely little details that would make the environment feel vibrant and alive, such as describing the various flora and fauna that the characters might encounter, there's only so much I can do, because outside of what I've read in the past, I just don't know what the natural world looks like. Urban environments are just as difficult. In Enemies of the Crown we visit Lockbury, a little city inspired by the English Midlands during the Industrial Revolution. I can tell you about the barges that bob along the Great North Canal as they ship supplies throughout the Northern Kingdom, and how Evander, who's from a rural background, feels when he looks at Lockbury's bland, utilitarian architecture and the pollution caused by their factories. That's fine, and it works, but what am I going to do when we eventually visit Halborough, the capital of the Northern Kingdom? I want Halborough to feel like a real city with culture and character, but how am I going to define and distinguish upper, middle and lower class areas in a way that feels natural and nuanced? How am I supposed to create a vivid, immersive image in the minds of the audience when I don't necessarily know what it looks like either? Yes, I can focus on other sensory details, the sounds, the smells, the way the city makes characters feel, the way its citizens act, but I still want people to have a pretty picture in their minds. Luckily, in regards to the Northern Kingdom in the Bleeding Ground, or Dagrock, the setting for my short story Dishonoured in Death that you can read if you purchase Jeremy Fee's fantasy anthology Half Human Heroes, which is due for release in May, I have the added benefit of being able to just make some of it up. It's my world, my rules, and I can do what I want. That doesn't entirely eliminate the problem though, because I still want my environments to feel believable and immersive, which is difficult to achieve when I don't have a frame of reference for inspiration. It's even more difficult when it comes to the real world, because I don't know what my local architecture's like, never mind foreign or historical settings. How are my characters ever supposed to visit places like Rome, New York, Bangladesh or Tokyo when I have no idea how to describe them? At the end of the day, even if I did a ton of research, I'd never fully understand or get an authentic feel for how those places look. I'd only ever be parroting other people's descriptions, like a naughty school kid who does all their own work on Wikipedia. So, yeah. Shocking news, physical descriptions are my biggest challenge as a blind author, and I know that some of you are thinking, Mason? That was obvious. But I still think it was worth talking about, even if it's just so that people can bear that in mind when they read my work. I don't want people to think that I just don't care about representation, or that I'm a lazy author whose writing lacks any diversity, realism, or depth. My question of the day is this. If you have a hobby, what about it is the most challenging thing? Have you enjoyed this video? If so, the like and subscribe buttons are just sitting there, waiting to be pressed. Now press them, or you'll make a blind man cry. And nobody wants that. If you've got thoughts to share, or you want to say hi, then you know where the comment section is, and you can find the links to all my social media in the description. Thanks ever so much for spending time with me today, guys. Until next time, take care. For now I'm off, and you should have a good one.